Hello, I'm Mark Pritchett, President and CEO of Gulf Coast Community Foundation. Libraries are so crucial to the well-being and advancement of our community. At Gulf Coast, together with our donors, we champion everything they do, from implementing green technologies to creating programs that skill up our students. We are tremendous believers in the power of libraries in advancing our region and providing meaningful support for our residents. Today, you're in for an inspired journey. You'll hear many stories from folks as to why they love their libraries, why we all love our libraries. Now it's time to introduce our hosts for today, Alisa Mitchell and Kat Hughes, who will start the show. These two have paved the way for the future of libraries as leaders of the Library Foundation for Sarasota County, an organization dedicated to supporting, educating, and advocating for strong libraries in Sarasota County. Over to you, Alisa and Kat.
Thanks, Mark. And thanks Gulf Coast Community Foundation for being our presenting sponsor today. I'm Alisa Mitchell. I am the Executive Director of the Library Foundation for Sarasota County.
And I'm Kat Hughes, a board member on the Library Foundation.
We are so delighted to welcome you to our Love Our Library celebration this afternoon. And we want to make sure you know that Kat and I had our COVID test this morning, and we are all good, which is why we are sitting so close together without our masks on today.
We have a great program for you today. Over the next 45 minutes or so, you're going to learn about all the tremendous work our libraries have done to support and connect our communities over the past year. You'll also hear from library patrons as well as librarians themselves, and the main event, you'll hear an interview with Susan Orlean, who literally wrote the book on libraries.
At the Library Foundation, we work to support, educate, and advocate for strong public libraries in Sarasota County. We know that our libraries are a well-loved and essential community service, and we work hard every day to make sure they have the resources they need to remain strong, current, and accessible. We would like to thank our sponsors. It is because of their wonderful, generous contributions that this celebration is available to everyone, just like our public libraries.
To begin the show, we're starting where else? At the library. Let's head there now to hear from some of the incredible people who keep our libraries going.
2020 definitely had some challenges. I think in libraries we're very used to changing and adapting pretty much all the time. 2020 was definitely a year of rapid fire changing and adapting.
I would say the most challenging part of 2020 was the uncertainty.
For me, it was the fear of this little thing that I couldn't see, hear, taste, touch, any of that.
I think the most challenging part for me was realizing just how integral that day-to-day interaction was.
Especially when so much of what we do is hands-on, whether it's doing programming with children, crafts and activities, or our creation station equipment, or helping people on the computer.
We as librarians and staff members all really had to work together to mobilize as quickly as possible to start serving our patrons in these new ways, in this new and ever-changing environment.
It was a great year to try to be creative about it as far as reaching out to our community and creating those connections and meeting people's needs.
We were able to start encouraging people to use our electronic resources. We'd always had them, but we then invested and made them more robust.
Pre-recorded videos for story times.
They didn't necessarily need digital access as long as they had some kind of connection to a phone, whether it was a landline or a mobile. They could call the library for stories or some jokes.
When we were all making masks for the county workers, that was really important. When we hit 1,000, we were really proud and really excited.
You know, making unemployment applications available even during the closure outside of the library for people who didn't have computers.
Our curbside service, when we implemented that was really hands down one of the big lifesavers, I think, for our community.
When vaccine registration opened up, we've been roping off specific computers that people can use just for that, and keeping people informed with that ever-changing information as well.
Staff has really risen to the occasion.
I will say that just the act of trying and doing something feels good. It's, at the end of the day, all that you can do.
Well, I think we all feel a little bit tired, but it's a good tired. I think it's just really a privilege that we've had the chance to make some level of difference in the lives of our patrons and in the community.
It's very gratifying to know that we are still playing a crucial role in people's lives and that we are able to reach people even at this time when we're more distant from them.
I have found it to be a little bit empowering. I know now more what I can do, and I know that I feel like my staff knows that they can survive this and we can all get through this as long as we're working together.
My name's Erin Clay. I'm the manager at the Betty J. Johnson, North Sarasota Public Library.
Hi, my name is Jose Cruz and I'm the Youth Services Librarian at Shannon Staub Library.
Hi, my name is Laura Hampton. I am a librarian at Selby Public Library in downtown Sarasota.
Hi, my name is Alicia Diaz and I'm the assistant manager at the Selby Public Library.
What an honor to be working alongside so many extraordinary people. I'm Renee Dibalato, the Director of Libraries and Historical Resources for Sarasota County. In this role, I've had the privilege of leading some of the most committed staff members who have worked tirelessly for you, our library users, to ensure that our libraries stay open, accessible, and welcoming to our community through both good times and challenging times. Over the last year, we've worked incredibly hard to find new ways to continue to serve our community, and I'm delighted that many of these changes are here to stay. We've made huge strides to increase and improve access to our digital resources with a consistent focus on our role as a community hub for essential services. And despite the pandemic, our libraries are still buzzing with life. Whether in our buildings or online, people are using the library to learn, explore, create, and connect. And our staff is still hard at work, continuously evolving to meet the new and growing needs of our community by creating digital programs, finding innovative ways to deliver materials, and always helping our patrons find information on everything from COVID vaccines to student tutoring services to how to navigate the latest technology. To me, libraries are more than books and services. At the heart of any library are people. It's our staff who make all of this possible and our library users who make it all worthwhile. That's why I'm so excited to be celebrating people here today. To each and every person working in our libraries, thank you for all that you do. And to our users, remember, we're still here for you. I also want to thank everyone who supports the Library Foundation. The Foundation provides us with critical support in so many ways, from increased funding for digital resources, to support for our creation stations, and the Imagination Library program. We are so grateful for this partnership. So thank you for being here today. And now let's continue our celebration by hearing directly from some of our users on how our libraries have impacted them.
I love my library, and especially this location because it's in the community in which I live in.
We love going to the library.
I'm here every week.
I'm here just about every day.
The library is a pretty cool place to come and hang out and chill, read books, enjoy yourself.
Well, I'm addicted to reading.
I'll come here and read about an hour a day.
Our favorite thing is to check out books to read.
Music, CDs you can check out, and there's magazines.
I have 4 adult kids, and this was their second home.
We've started to do the story time since they've been outside. We used to go to Baby Ryman Sign when they had that, and then we've been to 40 Carrots, and now we're at story time, and it's so much fun.
And the kids also love when they get little projects in the gift bags. They love to come home and do that.
I love my library because it gives us different resources.
And there's lots of information that I might have missed from someplace that I can come look it up here.
Well, we've been using the curbside book pickup, and we've been working with the librarians finding books to be held for us, and that's been a real help.
I love how friendly the staff are and how helpful they are.
I love the staff, and they're just very, very friendly.
It's also nice just to feel part of a group and a community because of what's going on right now. It's hard to get together.
So that's been nice to start back being social but safe.
So many of the people from the community are visiting here, and we share information.
These folks here are wonderful. I really wish more and more people would come into the libraries.
The people here are wonderful, helpful, Couldn't ask for a better place.
I really love this place.
It's so wonderful to hear from our library patrons. Our libraries have worked so hard this past year to help us stay connected to the resources and the community that we love. In a year that has been remarkable for the amount of change and isolation that we have all been asked to endure, our libraries, as a place for community, are more important than ever. Our libraries work so hard to make sure that we have the resources we need, and today we have the opportunity to make sure they have the resources they need. Here's our board president, Isabel Norton, to tell us more.
Hello, and thank you for joining us to celebrate our wonderful library system. My name is Isabel Norton, and I'm happy to serve as president of the Library Foundation for Sarasota County. Usually, I'd be talking to you and a large group at the municipal auditorium after a lovely lunch. But as you know, there's nothing much usual about the past 12 months or so. So much has happened, so much has changed, and our libraries have changed to fit the new needs of the community and our citizens. The libraries have changed too. And they are working hard to provide new programs, new opportunities, and innovative ways to ensure access to important support. Now, it's our turn to support the needs of the libraries, never replacing county government support, but supplementing and enhancing those programs and needs. That's why we are so excited to announce our challenge match. A group of generous donors have stepped forward to contribute $30,000, and they are challenging you and everyone in the community to match it. These generous gifts will increase the library's digital resources, which are so critical in a time of remote learning. They will provide support for the innovative programs, outreach, and initiatives to reach and serve more residents. Continue to advocate for strong and sustained public funding for our libraries. To participate in this incredible match, this wonderful opportunity to strengthen our libraries, please text the number 224319 to the phone number 855-575-7888, or just click on the button below. Thank you for making our libraries great. I applaud you.
Thank you, Isabel. So you may think of February as the month of love, and it's the same for libraries. Alisa, did you know that February is National Library Lovers Month?
I do. This is why I have my little heart here. All about the libraries. Love the libraries.
Indeed. And to celebrate, patrons wrote their own Valentines sharing why they love their library. Each is a story into how the libraries help a multitude of people in a multitude of ways. Here's what they had to say.
Library Lovers Day, Friday, February 14th.
I love libraries because I love books.
I love my library because
I love my library because
I love my library because it has all the books you could ever dream of.
I love my library because it is filled with amazing books that teach, inspire, transport me every time I check one out.
Because through books, I have been transported to worlds unknown with people I could only dream of meeting in a lifetime.
I love my library because it's safe, secure, clean, warm, and quiet environment.
I love my library because it's home away from home.
I love my library because I have more fun there than anywhere.
the library is my favorite place to visit.
it provides a multifaceted, safe, fun environment for my girls to play.
Our local library is an inviting place for me and my children.
Not just books, but movies and popcorn too.
I love my library because it has a ton of books, events, and activities for toddlers.
It's 50% of my social activities. So much to do.
I also love how easy and convenient it is to get books from other branches.
My librarians know the answers to the questions I haven't even thought to ask.
I love my library because the staff is friendly and helpful. The new building is great.
And most of all, I never met a library I didn't like.
I love my library because it is more than a library.
I love my library because they share the love of books with others.
And the best part is the truly warm, welcoming, and inviting personalities of all our library family, especially Mr. Jose and Mrs. Lynn. That's me.
When we first started planning this event, we knew we wanted to focus on our love and appreciation for the libraries. And we wanted to find an author who would help us celebrate the libraries and everything they mean for our community. We found the absolute best person in the award-winning journalist and author Susan Orlean, whose most recent book, The Library Book, talks about why libraries are so important in our communities.
And to interview Susan, we could ask for no one better than a retired journalist, a fervent library lover, and a supporter of the Library Foundation from its very beginnings, and just the nicest person you've ever met.
The nicest person you will ever meet.
Let's be honest.
Yeah, it's true.
That's Sarasota's very own Charlie Husking. Take it away, Charlie.
Thank you, Kat and Alisa. So nice to be here, and I'm especially honored to be introducing Susan Orlean, whom the Washington Post has called a national treasure. Susan has been a longtime writer for the New Yorker magazine. She's the author of 10 books, including the most recent, The Library Book. Susan, welcome virtually. I'm sorry you're not here in person, especially since I hear you know and love Sarasota.
I'm very sorry not to be there. I'm really glad that I can join you in some way, but I would have loved a little walk on your gorgeous beach and a chance to enjoy being in Florida.
Well, return visit for sure. It's a great community with great libraries. Your book focuses on a devastating 1986 fire at the Los Angeles Central Library, but it's also full of rich detail about the history of libraries, the people who work at libraries, and those of us who love libraries. Tell me, in your research, what maybe surprised you the most about libraries? I think you said you realize they're more important now than ever.
That was the great and most kind of encouraging thing that I discovered, because I went into this story having in my mind the question that I think many people have, which is, what is the meaning of a library in a world that's so digital? It was wonderful to discover that libraries are just as vital and necessary as they've ever been. They've adapted throughout their history. Libraries today don't look anything like libraries did when they first came to this country. And we are glad about that. I mean, when libraries first started opening in the United States, they were mostly restricted to being used by men. So to begin—
And most librarians were men at the time, right?
Yeah. Yes, no women, no children. In many cases, they were for white men only. So libraries have always evolved. And the great news is that in this digital era, they've continued to evolve and embraced the new world of information rather than trying to resist it. That was thrilling. I think the single fact that I liked the most was learning that there are more libraries in the United States than there are McDonald's.
I think that's a very great trend. Now, your love of libraries dates to your visits as a child with your mother, and you write very vividly about that in the book. Talk about those visits.
My mom was a great lover of libraries, and she really believed that rather than buying books, you made regular trips to the library and borrowed books. She loved librarians. She fantasized about becoming a librarian, and she just reveled in the whole experience of going to the library. Starting when I was very, very young, we went regularly, probably a minimum of twice a week. There was a little branch library very near my house. These trips were very special. There was something about the experience of getting in the car and not knowing what you were going to find. When I was young, there was a feeling of complete freedom, because it was really one of the few places where I was allowed to wander on my own, because it was a very safe place for a little kid to wander around. And I had a kind of agency that children don't generally have, which was if I wanted a book, I got it. I didn't have to beg my mother to buy it for me. I didn't, it was something that felt absolutely intoxicating. This
you
incredible...
said, you put it though, it's the first time you felt a sense of autonomy, I think. Yeah.
Absolutely, and I think that that's partly what thrills children so much about libraries, just this feeling that they can choose what they want and have whatever they want. It was also a very special memory with my mom. There was some ritual that we had, some way that it felt like our special trip.
Sure. But then your love of libraries waned a little bit until you brought your own son, after you moved out to LA, to the library. As I remember, he had to do a project about visiting a government building or a department. Talk about that.
Right. And I think this is typical for a lot of people, that they enter a phase in their life where they want to build their own library, and they start buying books, and probably associated with the first time you have your own home. So I hadn't been using the library that much. When my son was in first grade, and we had just moved to LA, in fact, he had an assignment to interview someone who worked for the city. And I proposed that he interview a garbage collector, and he instead said that he wanted to talk to a librarian. I was thrilled. I thought, how did I create this child who wants to talk to a librarian? When I took him to the library, I truly traveled back in time and was reminded of all of those trips that I had taken with my mother, and how magical they were, and how I was repeating that same special ritual with my son. The library in many ways felt so familiar, even though it was 3,000 miles from my home in Ohio. It was many years later, but the sense of familiarity was so profound that it immediately made me think that I wanted to figure out why we have such emotional connections to libraries, and what gave this such power over me.
And on one of these visits, a librarian touring with you picks up a book and says, "Oh, you can still smell the smoke." And what happened then?
This was the beginning of this book. I had a feeling that I wanted to write a book about libraries, but I didn't really know what exactly I would be saying. And I was being given a tour of the downtown branch of the LA Library, where I had never been, and I was completely smitten. The building is amazing. And the gentleman giving me the tour pulled the book off the shelf and took a deep whiff of the book and said, "You can still smell the smoke in some of them." I had no idea what he was talking about. And I said, "Well, did they used to let people smoke in the library?" And he said, no, smoke from the fire. I still didn't know what he was talking about. And I said, "What fire?" And he said, "Oh, the big fire in 1986. It closed the library for 7 years." And in that moment, I thought, this is what I'm going to write about.
And that library fire didn't get a lot of attention because I think it was the day after the Chernobyl incident, so it didn't get a lot of press coverage. Now, the library fire, it burned or damaged more than 1 million books. Almost every firefighter in LA had to fight it. But it was also a very inspirational story of the recovery. And talk about that, especially the volunteers who showed up the day after. That's a great story.
The fire occurred during the week. It burned for 7 hours, and by the time they put the fire out, there was a realization that there were some books in the library that had survived, and they had to be gotten out of the building quickly, and the damaged books had to be taken as quickly as possible to be rehabilitated without putting out any call for volunteers. Thousands of people just showed up at the library and said, what can I do to help? And because people think of LA as a place that doesn't have a lot of civic sense, I think that it was really important to point out that that isn't really true, and that when it came to the library, people simply came downtown and said, tell me how I can help. One of the things that had to be done, as I said, was getting all of these books out of the library. People formed a chain, a human chain, from the library to an area where they had boxes to box up these books and put them in storage. And they handed the books out, hand over hand, from the library to the area where they were packed up. And people I know who I interviewed, who were part of that, said it was an incredible moment of feeling this continuity among the people of LA and an appreciation of their love of the library and their desire to help it and to pass these stories on.
You said they kind of became a human library, passing on knowledge, which is what libraries do every day. And there's a great passage you're going to read for us now about libraries and their role in preserving memory. Could you do that now? Thanks.
This is page 93 in the book. If something you learn or observe or imagine can be set down and saved, and if you can see your life reflected in previous lives and can imagine it reflected in subsequent ones, you can begin to discover order and harmony. You know that you are part of a larger story that has shape and purpose, a tangible, familiar past, and a constantly refreshed future. We are all whispering in a tin can on a string, but we are heard. So we whisper the message into the next tin can and the next string. Writing a book, just like building a library, is an act of sheer defiance. It is a declaration that you believe in the persistence of memory.
That's wonderful. Thank you. That was one of my favorite passages. In the book, you also talk about another kind of book burning by dictators throughout the ages. We think of Nazi Germany, but you point out it's happened a long time ago in the past. But you also write about your own attempt to burn a book. You figured you should do it, and it's kind of macabre, but also very funny. Talk about how you decided what book to burn.
Yeah. Well, this was really difficult. I had decided that it would be a good exercise for me to burn a book. Partly because I was going to be describing this huge fire in which all of these books burned, and I wanted to know what it looked like. I was also very curious about the emotional component of it, namely that we have a sort of taboo about burning books, something that feels like a violation. It feels like you're destroying something that has an actual soul. Part of me thought, well, isn't that just silly and superstitious? But I also knew that I had a lot of difficulty getting rid of books that I didn't want. I have a lot of books that I will never read, and I just can't throw them out. It's something that feels wrong. So I decided I'm going to burn a book. And first I thought I would burn one of these books that I have that I'm not interested in, but I felt like that just felt wrong to me. I mean, they were already unloved, and it felt really terrible to take one of these unloved books and burn it. So I thought, well, I'll take a book I really love. And then I thought, well, I don't want to burn a book I love. That feels even worse. I thought, well, I have a lot of copies of my own books, so maybe I'll burn one of those. And then I thought, well, I don't want to burn one of my books. That seems terrible. And I said to my husband, you know what, I think this was a bad idea because I can't figure out what to burn. I feel uncomfortable about it. And he said, all right. And a few days later, he came home and he was just grinning from ear to ear. And he said, I found the book for you to burn. And he handed me a copy of Fahrenheit 451. And I thought, that is the book to burn.
The ultimate
book. A book about book
burning.
What I didn't know at the time was that Ray Bradbury was a passionate advocate for the LA Public Library. So it was this incredible story that I didn't even know of his connection to the very library that I was writing about.
In fact, though his books in the library burned in the fire, the great postscript is they had an essay contest for kids when they were rebuilding the library. And who was one of the judges? Ray Bradbury. Just great. You talk with obvious affection about librarians and the people who work in libraries. Talk about, they are really the great public servants and they've become almost frontline workers in this pandemic age. Talk about what impressed you most about them.
You know, I think that I've always thought librarians were wise and special. They seem, there's something about them that always seemed very, very, very distinct and unique to me. What I really came to appreciate is that the people who are drawn to this profession really feel that it's a mission, that it's public service, very much a public service. Nobody does it to get rich, that's for sure. They do it because they believe in the idea of sharing information, protecting people's right to acquire the knowledge they need. And they are often in the front line of issues on censorship and inclusiveness in the library collection.
I love the quote you had from one librarian. She said, my friends think I know everything. We're watching the Olympics and they say, oh, Karen, what are the rules for the luge, you know?
Well, I actually believe librarians really do know everything.
I think you're right.
Or they know how to know everything. They know how to find everything.
I think about 10,000 people a day use one of our libraries, either online now or virtual or in person. What does it say about a community that has a vital and much-loved library system? And why should people support it?
Well, first of all, libraries are one of the defining characteristics of a community. When you think about it, a town feels like it really exists as a town when it has a library and a cemetery. Those seem to be the things that define it as a place that people have connected to and feel committed to. Even if you don't use the library as a public service, it transcends even the school system because it's open to everyone of every age. And in fact, it has become sort of the clearinghouse for all civic information. It's the place that people, in fact, that's one of the great ironies about the pandemic. Ordinarily, in some kind of crisis, the library becomes the place that people go to get information, to get Wi-Fi, if there's a problem with connectivity. I think it's a very unusual thing to have libraries as impacted as the rest of the community, but their existence is really crucial. It's important for everyone.
I'm amazed how our libraries have adapted and pivoted, and they're even providing service now in these difficult times. You said that right before you learned about the library fire, you had decided you were finished writing books because, quote, working on them felt like a slow-motion wrestling match. Did this experience energize you again? Are you ready to get back in the ring? Are you working on something else?
You know, it did actually energize me, even though I thought I'll do one more book and that's it. But it's incredibly gratifying to write a book. It's very hard. It's very, very hard. It takes a long time. And it's very much a performance. You don't know how well you've done until the public votes on it in a sense. So it puts you out on the line in a way that is very vulnerable. On the other hand, to create something that has a life of its own and will last, hopefully, for forever, is enormously satisfying. And the hard work is not going to be any easier, but the realization of how enormous the satisfaction is really came home for me.
That's great. Before we go to a few questions, we're going to close by asking you to do another reading. And this last reading, as I remember, it was at the end of a day at the LA Library, and you were kind of looking around and you were really struck by what you saw. And I think this really sums up your book.
And this is actually on the very last page of the book. I looked around the room at the few people scattered here and there. Some were leaning into books, and a few were just resting, having a private moment in a public place. And I felt buoyed by being here. This is why I wanted to write this book, to tell about a place I love that doesn't belong to me, but feels like it is mine, and how that feels marvelous and exceptional. All the things that are wrong in the world seem conquered by a library's simple, unspoken promise. Here I am. Please tell me your story. Here is my story. Please listen.
Thank you so much. We have a few questions that some of our sponsors sent in ahead of time, but before I have one more that I wanted to ask. Your nonfiction book, The Orchid Thief, was turned into an Oscar-nominated film adaptation. Now, in the film, Meryl Streep plays Susan Orlean, or I should say a alternate reality version of you, who's an adulteress, takes drugs, and may be interested in committing a murder. Now, when the screenwriter Charlie Kaufman approached you, what was your initial reaction?
My initial reaction was absolutely not. And I dug my heels in for quite a while and said, no, you can't do this. It's just impossible. It's going to ruin my career. But he persisted, and the producers persisted, and one day, for reasons that I can't really explain to you, I woke up and thought, oh, why not? Let's just have an adventure.
Did that cause any awkward moments at a high school reunion? Somebody come up to you, Susan, what was jail like or something? I don't know.
Well, I've had a few people who've asked me in a very awkward way if I'm still in touch with John LaRoche, implying that we had this romantic relationship, and I just have to gently explain to them that that was fiction.
Now, I heard that the library book might be coming to the screen, either big screen or TV. Can you tell us anything about that?
Yes, it's being adapted for television, and I'm actually working on it. So that's been a really, really interesting project and something very different.
We have a question. Who are your favorite authors, your favorite genre to read?
I read a lot of fiction, actually, which often surprises people since I don't write fiction, but I love, first of all, I love being taken into a story, an internal story of characters, and I love the writing in fiction, and I actually feel I learn a lot by reading fiction. I would say that my all-time favorite author is William Faulkner, who I was really passionate about and who I think inspired me to think about language as this, like almost a plastic form that you could shape to create emotion. And he was an incredible master.
Final question, what has it been like to be a writer in a pandemic? Obviously, writing is a solitary experience, but you do so much research, you're out and about. Well, how have you adapted?
It's both a perfectly adaptable profession because you sit in front of a computer screen a lot, but it's also, as you say, for research, really problematic. I've never not gone out into the field doing research. I feel like it's really important to see things and touch things and hear things directly from people. So there are a lot of stories that I've just decided to put on hold because I don't want to do them as just something that I'm reporting from my computer. On the other hand, we're very lucky. Writers are very lucky because people are reading more than ever.
Even though you've been generous with your time, I feel we've only scratched the surface on this book. It's also about the history of Los Angeles. It's about architecture. It's about some very interesting and eccentric characters in the history of the library system. Thank you so much for sharing this with us, and we really appreciate you being here. Now back to you, Alisa and Kat.
Thank you so much, Charlie and Susan. And Susan, you have a standing invitation to come back to Sarasota at any time. And I just love that whole entire interview that I would like to have Charlie and Susan over for dinner every single night when this plague is over. So that's the invitation too.
Me too.
Yeah.
Dream goals.
Right, that's right.
It was so great hearing how Susan and Charlie both talked about what an impact the libraries have had on their life. And you hear stories like that all the time.
Yeah, we always
about how libraries have changed and affected people. And speaking of those stories, we have a great one from Daniela Rodriguez, our student board member, who's going to share how the libraries have impacted her. Let's hear what Daniela has to say.
When I moved here, I didn't speak a word of English, and books taught me how to properly socialize in some ways and some points in my life. I had a sister here already, and she spoke English only, and I did not speak English. And my parents just spoke to me in Spanish and English, which I still really didn't understand that. My first day at school, people wanted to talk to me, and I did not understand, or I didn't even know how to respond, because I didn't even know like hi or hello or anything like that. So by the time I was in 5th grade, I understood more. I could speak more English, and I got to know my sister, I got to know friends, and I met my best friend still. Libraries, since the beginning when I moved, have been a home, a second home for me. They have become a big part of my life. Since before I didn't speak English, books were like my friends. I wanted to get people like my age more interested in libraries, since I know what a book can do to you. I wanted to get other people to have the same feeling as I did. I feel grateful, and I feel also very happy to be doing something like that and help the libraries in this community.
Thank you so much, Daniela, for sharing your story with us. I am so excited and feel so hopeful when I hear stories about how our libraries impact our students and their dreams moving forward. Now we're going to take the show back to the library staff and hear some of the things they're looking forward to in this upcoming year.
In 2021, I am most excited to keep serving our community both online and in person.
In 2021, I'm really excited to continue exploring new ways to make our libraries more inclusive and accessible and welcoming for all of our patrons in Sarasota County.
In 2021, I'm excited to get on with the Chalk Fest at the Selby Public Library this summer to celebrate our centennial.
In 2021, I'm most looking forward to reconnecting with our former patrons and connecting with our new patrons.
In 2021, I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing more of our patrons in person.
Seeing your faces, we miss you, and continuing to do more of the in-person programming.
And welcoming everybody back into the library.
Wow, that was so wonderful to hear all the things people are excited for, looking forward. It was great.
It's so nice to be thinking positively about the future. It is. I am so excited to look forward to meeting so many of our foundation supporters, and also when we can all be back in the libraries together again for story times and music and concerts and lectures and puzzles and all of those things that make our libraries just so alive. What about you? What are you looking forward to, or what are you excited about?
Well, I'd have to say I'm most excited about our challenge match today
Yes,
of $30,000. So just so you don't forget about that, today every dollar you donate will be matched. So you're doubling your donation. And we thank you so much for your generosity and for your gifts today.
We do. We want to thank all of our sponsors, our volunteers, our staff at the libraries who worked so hard to help this happen. And we want to thank you. We want to thank you for everything you do today and every day to make our libraries the wonderful community resource that they are. And even after today, there are still so many ways you can have a positive impact on our libraries by supporting our foundation and helping us ensure that our libraries remain an indispensable community resource. I hope you'll join us.
On behalf of the Library Foundation for Sarasota County,
on behalf of the Sarasota County Public Library System,
On behalf of Gulf Coast Community Foundation,
on behalf of students everywhere,
thank you.
Thank you for supporting our library.
Thank you for supporting our libraries.
Gracias por apoyar las librerías.
Thank you for supporting our libraries.
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 thank you for supporting our libraries.